Welcome to lesson 2. We are going to continue with the unit 8, that's elasticity. So the summary of our lesson is interpretation of price elasticity of demand. We shall look at point elasticity of demand, arc elasticity of demand, determinants of price elasticity of demand, and then we shall look at the practical application of price elasticity of demand. We are going to start with interpret price elasticity of demand using illustrations. So let's begin by looking at a situation where demand is perfectly inelastic. A situation where demand is perfectly inelastic, price elasticity of demand will be equal to 0. So this implies that a change in price results into 0 change in quantity demanded. So in this case, price has no effect on quantity demanded. Quantity demanded remains constant as illustrated in our graph. And then the second one is when demand is inelastic. So when demand is inelastic, our price elasticity of demand will be greater than 0 but less than 1. This implies that a change in price results into a proportionately smaller change in quantity demanded. There is a bigger change in price leading to a smaller change in quantity demanded as illustrated in the graph. So when you see the gap between P1 and P2 and then you compare it with the gap Q2 and Q1, you see that the gap P1, P2 is greater than the gap Q2, Q1. So this shows that a bigger change in price led to a proportionately smaller change in quantity demanded. So when price changes, that will affect quantity demanded by a lesser percentage as change in price. Then the next one is when demand is unitary, or where we have unitary elasticity. So this one is when we calculate and we get price elasticity of demand as being equal to 1. So this implies that a change in price results into a proportionately equal change in quantity demanded. So the percentage change in price will be equal to the percentage change in quantity demanded. So let's see a situation when where our price elasticity of demand is greater than 1 but less than infinity. In this case, we refer to it as elastic. So in this case, a change in price results into a proportionately bigger change in quantity demanded. As we can see on our graph, when you compare the gap P1, P2 and the gap Q2, Q1, gap Q2, Q1 is greater than the gap P1, P2. So this means that when price increased from P1 to P2, it led to a very big decrease in quantity demanded of our commodity from Q1 to Q2. So that implies that when price for this commodity slightly changes, it will affect quantity demanded by more than proportionate change in price. And the last one is when our price elasticity of demand is equal to infinity. This implies that at a constant price, any amount of commodity can be purchased by the consumer. So our price is constant, but quantity demanded is the one that changes. So there is constant price, but quantity demanded changes. At constant price, consumers vary the amount of commodity they buy. So in this case, price has no effect on quantity demanded because it is constant. Let's move on to the next category of elasticity of demand. So remember we said elasticity of demand is categorized into price elasticity of demand, point elasticity of demand, arc elasticity of demand, and cross elasticity of demand. So those are the categories that we shall discuss under elasticity of demand. So now we are done with the price elasticity of demand. Now we are going to discuss point elasticity of demand. So point elasticity of demand is defined as price elasticity at a point on a demand curve. So we measure relative changes in price of a given commodity due to changes in price at a single point on a demand curve. I guess we all understand what demand curve is. So it gives a price elasticity with a complete accuracy at a point. It can be calculated using the formula of like how we calculate price elasticity of demand is also how we calculate point elasticity. It is percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in price with a negative sign, just as we calculated for price elasticity of demand. So let's see what arc elasticity also means. Arc elasticity refers to the measure of degree of responsiveness of quantity demanded of a given commodity along the same demand curve between 2 points. So it is given by the formula percentage change in quantity demanded multiplied by the price average of the 2 points divided through by percentage change in price times the average of the quantity demanded of the 2 points on the demand curve. So we are going to have some examples. Before we do the example, let's see how we illustrate arc elasticity of demand and point elasticity of demand on the same demand curve. So we have an illustration of a demand curve with 2 points. That's point A and point B. They are along the same demand curve. So if price changes from P1 to P2, we can measure the elasticity of demand. What we get is the elasticity of demand at point A, or starting point. And if price changes from P2 to P1, we measure elasticity, and what we get is elasticity of demand at point B. Arc elasticity, on the other hand, is the average between A and B. We change the formula to use average prices and average quantity, as we shall see in the examples. So let's take this example for first of all arc elasticity. So this is going to be our question, and it reads: due to coronavirus attack in East African states, the supply chain of both consumer and producer products has been highly affected, just as in other regions of the world. Because of this, 1 kilogram of ugali, which used to cost Rwandan francs 200 in some districts in Rwanda, has increased to 600 Rwandan francs per kilogram. Due to this, there has been a significant decrease in the quantity bought of ugali from 2,000 kilograms per day to 800 kilograms in Gashora sector. So let us assume that at point B, price is 200 and quantity is kilograms 2,000, and that at point A, price is 100 francs 600 and the quantity is 800. So we are going to see how we can calculate gross elasticity of demand for Gashora sector, and then we shall have to interpret our answer. So from the example given, let's calculate for arc elasticity of demand. So we have seen that arc elasticity of demand is calculated by using the formula percentage change in quantity multiplied by price average divided by percentage change in price times quantity average. But price average, we get our original price plus final price, and you divide by 2, and then our quantity average, we take original quantity plus final quantity divided by 2. So this will give us 800, which is now the new quantity, minus 2,000, which was the original quantity, times 200 plus 800 divided by 2 as our numerator. Then our denominator will be 600 minus 200 times 2,000 plus 800, or divided by 2. And then remember that for elasticity of demand, we include a negative sign. So for arc elasticity, point elasticity, and price elasticity of demand, we include we add a negative sign on our formula so as to get a positive answer, since if we don't put it, our answers will always be negative and we may not be able to interpret the negative answers because we do not have negative prices. So this will give us 480,000 divided by 560,000, which will give us 0.68. And you know, we said if we have an answer which is greater than 0 but less than 1, then we interpret it as inelastic. So in this example, our elasticity of demand is inelastic. So let's go to now an example on how we can calculate point elasticity of demand. So if we take a point A to be corresponding to price 600 and the quantity 800, and the point B to be corresponding to quantity 2000 and the price 200. So you are going to calculate for point elasticity at point A. So point elasticity of demand at point A will be given by percentage change in price over percentage change in quantity demanded. We shall use the same formula like the one we used to calculate for price elasticity of demand in our previous lesson. So we shall substitute, and then we shall have 2000 minus 800 times 600 divided through by 200 minus 600 times 800. So this will give us 720,000 over 320,000, which will give us 2.25 as our answer. So at point A, the commodity is price elastic. So now your assignment is to calculate for the point elasticity of demand at point B, and then you interpret your answer. So let's discuss the determinants of price elasticity of demand. The first one is consumers' income. So this one is about the levels of income of consumers. So normally higher income earners, they tend to have or to afford even buying expensive commodities, and then the low income earners, they do not afford to buy high expensive commodities. So high income earners have inelastic demand, and low income earners have elastic demand. Then you have availability of substitutes. Commodities which have many substitutes are price elastic, and then commodities which have no close substitutes at all are price inelastic. So it is because commodities with the substitutes, when their prices increase, buyers shift to buying their substitutes. However, commodities which have no close substitutes, buyers do not have alternative. They have to continue buying even if when their prices increase. So we have price expectations. If prices are expected to increase in the future, such commodities whose prices are expected to increase, they become price inelastic in the present. However, if prices are expected to reduce in the future, the demand for those commodities become elastic in the present. Then you have price of the commodity. So normally cheap commodities, they tend to be price inelastic. So take an example, say a matchbox. A matchbox may be costing like 20 francs. So if sellers increased the price of a matchbox from 20 francs to 25 francs, still people will continue buying them because this will not affect them so much. But for expensive commodities, when their prices increase, then people will have to reduce their demand by a big percentage because it will be taking a big percentage of their income. Then the other determinant may talk about is the degree of urgency involved. So urgently needed commodities, they are price inelastic, while commodities which are not urgently needed are price elastic. So we have also habit forming commodities. So habit forming commodities like cigarettes, other beverages which make people addicted to them, they are price inelastic, while commodities which are not habit forming, they are mainly they mainly have elastic demand. Then you have advertising as a determinant. Highly advertised commodities, they tend to be price inelastic because these adverts keep always creating awareness in the public, and sometimes they persuade people to buy those items. However, commodities which are not highly advertised, they tend to be price elastic. And then we have the number of uses of a given commodity. So commodities which have several uses, they tend to be price inelastic as their prices are increasing, because people tend to use them for only useful purposes. So take an example of electricity. We use electricity for several purposes. So when it is becoming cheaper, people make use of it for several purposes, like cooking, like washing, buying more machines like washing machines, lighting the house, and so on. However, when the price of electricity is increasing, people may only choose to use electricity to light the house, and maybe use the charcoal box to iron their clothes if electricity is expensive. So commodities which are used for several purposes, they tend to be price inelastic as their prices are increasing. Then the last one is about the durability of commodities. So durable commodities have inelastic demand. Take an example of a bed. Someone can use a bed for more than 10 years. So the decrease in price for beds may not encourage people to buy more beds. Why? Because a single bed they buy, they can use it forever. So decrease in prices for durable commodities sometimes do not encourage people who already have those items to buy them. So in that case, people may just maybe see price changes, but they are not interested in buying those items. However, commodities which are not durable or which can be used for a short period of time, they tend to be price elastic. So their changes in price can attract people to buy them. So I think those are the determinants, but they are not limited to only those ones. So the determinants of elasticity of demand depends on different variables, and then depending on different products. Now we have seen the determinants of price elasticity of demand. Let's move on to the practical application of this concept. How is it used in real life? So practically, price elasticity of demand is used by three entities. We have government, we have the producer, and then you have the consumer. So how do producers, for example, use price elasticity of demand? So price elasticity of demand is used by producers to determine whether to increase or to decrease prices of their commodities in order to increase total revenue. So if commodities are either price inelastic or price elastic, that one gives the producer an idea on whether to increase price or to decrease price. So normally, if price elasticity of demand is elastic, producers' total income increases when the price is reduced, just because consumers normally respond too much to a small change in price of that commodity. So when if a producer wants to make more money or to generate more revenue, then he has to reduce the price of the commodity so as to attract more people to buy the product. Let's see how this is illustrated. So when we look at our illustration, at point OP1, total revenue is OP1 times OQ1. So when price is reduced to OP2, total revenue becomes OP2 times OQ2. It can easily be identified that total revenue OP1 times OQ1 is smaller than total revenue OP2 times OQ2. Therefore, in order to increase total revenue, the seller should reduce the price if the commodity has elastic demand. On the other hand, when price elasticity of demand is inelastic, producers' total revenue increases when prices are increased. So take an example in the illustration that we have. At point OP1, total revenue is OP1 times OQ1. So when the price is increased to OP2, total revenue becomes OP2 times OQ2. It can easily be identified that total revenue OP1 times OP1 is smaller than total revenue OP2 times OQ2. Therefore, in order to increase total revenue, the seller should increase the price if the commodity has inelastic demand. So let's look at another application of price elasticity of demand. So price elasticity of demand is used by monopolists when practicing price discrimination. So a monopolist firm is a firm that produces a product which has no close substitutes. And then price discrimination is a situation where a firm or a seller sells the same product to different customers at different prices. So by condition, price discrimination has to be practiced by a monopolist, as we shall see in Senior 5 when we discuss market structures. So how is price discrimination used as a tool, or how is price elasticity of demand related to price discrimination? You have seen that we have what we call inelastic demand and we have what we call elastic demand, and so that in the determinants, high income earners, they tend to be pricey inelastic, and the low income earners are pricey elastic. So if you are selling a commodity, you have to know that when you are going to sell to low income earners, you have to charge a low price, and if you are going to sell to high income earners, you may charge a higher price. So monopolists use this as a way of generating more income by separating markets where the low income earners buy and where high income earners buy. So where high income earners buy, they are able to charge a higher price and generate more revenue by charging high prices. On the other hand, where low income earners buy, they charge low prices and they generate revenue by reducing prices and then increasing sales. In addition, price elasticity of demand helps a producer to determine the wage level of his or her workers. So when demand is inelastic, wages should be increased as the price increases. Producers' incomes will be high when the price rises, so the producer can increase workers' wages. However, if workers produce products whose demand is inelastic, then they tend to earn low wages as compared to their counterparts who produce commodities whose prices are inelastic. So let's discuss the application of price elasticity of demand to government. How does government use price elasticity of demand? So first of all, government uses price elasticity of demand sometimes to devalue its currency. So currency devaluation refers to the legal reduction in the value of a country's currency in terms of other currencies. So what's the purpose of currency devaluation? Currency devaluation is used to promote exports of a given country since it makes them cheaper, and then it discourages imports since it makes imports expensive to the nationals, as we are going to see in the example. So for devaluation to be successful, then the exports of that country and its imports should be price elastic. However, if they are price inelastic, then devaluation becomes disastrous, because it will increase the cost of trading between that country and the rest of the world, because it will make imports very, very expensive, and it will not have significant improvement on the export earnings received from the sale of exports. Let's have an example on how we can calculate for devaluation. So devaluation, we said it is the legal reduction in the value of a country's currency in terms of other currencies. So if we assume that the exchange rate today for a United States dollar is 931 francs for $1. So, and we also assume that government devalues her currency by 30%. So now, to determine the new level of exchange rate, we shall calculate 30% of 931 francs. Then the value, the figure that we shall get, we shall add it to the former value of the Rwandan francs in terms of United States dollars. So we shall have 279 plus 930, which will give us a new exchange rate of 1,209. So after devaluation, our exchange rate will be $1 being equivalent to 1,209 Rwandan francs. So the application or the importance of devaluation is to increase exports and discourage imports, because when a currency loses value, it makes it expensive for the nationals to trade in foreign currency, and then it makes it cheaper for foreigners to buy the currency of that country which has devalued its currency, especially if they are trade partners. So you can see that before devaluation, our Rwandan franc was equivalent 930 Rwandan francs were equivalent to $1. So if we have Rwandan traders trading with the US, and then we have the US traders trading with Rwanda, after devaluation, the Rwandan traders will be spending much money to buy 1 unit of a dollar, and yet the American traders will be getting much money if they exchange their $1 into Rwandan francs than before. So in that case, it makes Rwandan products cheaper to the Americans, and then it makes American products expensive to Rwandans. So that's how devaluation is used to promote exports and discourage imports. However, for devaluation to be successful, the exports and the imports of a given country should be price elastic. If they are price inelastic, then it becomes disastrous to the economy, because the economy will have laid a trap which will catch it itself. So we have now another application of price elasticity of demand here for government. Government uses it to determine the tax rates. So government is supposed to impose high tax rates on products which are price inelastic, and then low tax rates on products which are price elastic. You take an example. So government is able to put high taxes, say, on habit forming goods like cigarettes, like beer, but for other commodities which are price elastic, take an example of say agricultural products. Agricultural products are price elastic because they have substitutes. If government say puts high taxes on rice, people may shift their demand to buying posho, and then the sellers of rice will lose out. So for government not to discourage traders who sell products with elastic demand, it has to impose a low tax rate so that it encourages continuous consumption from the seller, from the buyers. Then on the side of the consumers, price elasticity of demand helps them to determine their consumption choices.